Bueno, pues. Ah, sí, claro. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Institute of Engineering of Spain. First, I would like to thank the President of the authorities who accompanied you. The Director General of Industry, the President of FEANI, and the President of the FEANI Spanish National Committee, as well as the decision of the European Monitoring Committee of FEANI to hold at Madrid one of these meetings of the countries of the South. We are going to hold an interesting and collaborative conference on a topical issue, the skills of engineering in Europe, with the presence of relevant speakers at the roundtable, to which I thank you for your participation, as well as the moderator, our my friend Manuel Campo Vidal. Thank you, Manuel, for here come with us. Engineering has been, is, will be the solution to the problems of the society. And engineering has also been the instrument that has contributed most to improvement of the quality of life of mankind in this main facet and aspect. To remain useful, you must maintain the quality of your knowledge and the ability to adapt to the changing world around you. For this purpose, it is important for you and the authorities that govern you to maintain an adequate professional framework that guarantees the quality of professional intellectual engineering service. That is why, at this moment, the title of the conference is especially timely and suggestive. I wish the best success to the conference and wish you a pleasant stay in Madrid. Thank you very much. I don't the word to José Javier Medina, President of the FEANI Spanish National Committee.
Buenas tardes, good afternoon. Hello to everybody, to all our colleagues from the FEANI organization that are present this afternoon here with us and will participate in our roundtables. And also thank you to our colleague of the Spanish Institute of Engineering and our representative of the General Direction in our Ministry in relation with the activities that we could explain this afternoon and to start with our Congress. This is for us a very important occasion to present our FEANI, the Fédération Européenne d'Association Nationale d'Ingénieurs, in its origin in France, but now in Brussels, our international organization that integrates the 35 countries, 4 million of engineers all around the Europe organization. This is an organization that our president will introduce to you in their intervention. And I have to speak about that the opportunity as president of the Spanish National Committee of this body, this very prestigious and European body. We had the opportunity to organize this important event for you, this act in which we develop these several areas of knowledge and professional talent that we could see this area. And very important, thank you to all of you to attend this meeting. Yesterday morning, I have had the opportunity to offer a presentation to the European Monitoring Committee focused to 3 main priorities that we consider by the point of view of our National Spanish Monitoring National Committee in terms of the 3 axes, the 3 priorities to develop in our work, in our commitments, in representation of the professional engineers in Europe. I mean, first priority for us is relations with industry, leaders and decision makers. Second one is the permanent formation, the long life learning for our professionals, our professional engineers. And third one is the orientation of our ideas, projects, and works to the citizens' needs. This is very important for us. The challenges facing engineering in the present decade are increasingly closer to the day-to-day of citizens. This is very important. Science evolves by leaps and bounds, but engineering does much more for its character of innovation in transversal areas as important as industry, energy, or digitization of our environment. In view of these global trends, it requires engineering professionals trained with elements of differential talent that was able of developing multidisciplinary practical applications. The profiles of Europe engineers are converging towards a university education with more international exchange load and ways of studying closer to generalist knowledge skills, as well as together with specialization in emergency technological areas, where the progress in our research and development and innovation and methodologies of business areas go together. From the Spanish National Committee of FEANI, we have designed this engineering conference with a strong vocation to exchange knowledge and experiences with you, all of you, in three recognized areas of technological high demands, and where the priority is the design of efficient technical projects and the orientation of engineering solutions to the main concern of the citizens. You, the citizens, are the center of the engineers in all Europe. Thank you for your attention, and I give floor to our president, our European president from Portugal. Bem-vindo.
Well, good afternoon for everybody. I must say that is for me an honor and a privilege to be here in this session, invited by our National Committee of Spain from FEANI, and to say that these kind of organizations are very well appreciated within our network in Europe. Maybe I was asked to introduce FEANI very shortly. We have, as we learn now, we have 35 national committees, so covering 35 countries in the European higher education area. So not only in the in the European Union, but other countries like oriental part of Europe. And we are now in a very special situation that, you know, the engineers always face to social and technological changes and challenges. But now the problem is kind of velocity. The velocity of these changes are very much more higher, and we must be aware of that. And of course, we are trying to update our organization to these different movements that we understand in our continent. That's why we are now, in a strategic point of view, launching a new concept of Engineers Europe, bridging not only the national associations, but the academia and the industry, to have what we want to have a single voice for engineers in Europe. And this is to affirm our professional identity as engineers, as people that make things and for the human beings, so better water, better quality of life. And in this point is important, very important to have a qualification of engineers and mutual recognition in this kind of mobility that we have in Europe. So we have developed some products, as you know. So we have now a database for university programs. We have also links with other organizations, other European organizations in the area of the universities, young engineers as well. So we are very well concerned about the future of our young engineers. And the movements we have in the, not only in the European Union, but in Europe, we feel that we, as a federation of national organizations like these Spanish organizations, we are in the middle of very big changes that we must be updated, aware, and we are, of course, committed to have these feelings of our engineers to go further and go more in this realization of societal objectives. That is our main goal. So this is what we think about the near future, about our organizations, and these kind of events, because we rely on the national committees very much, and these kind of events are very important for our thinking, for our policies as well. Thank you very much for your invitation.
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to be here this afternoon to open this event. Spanish Committee of FEANI, Instituto de Ingeniería, Instituto de Graduados in Ingeniería de España. Thank you very much for the invitation. As all of you know, we are facing the so-called Industry 4.0 revolution. And at the same time, we are facing the challenges that this revolution is putting in front of us, but also we are facing the opportunities that this new revolution will have for our country and for our continent. We are convinced that the knowledge of what this new industrial revolution means is going to give us, and especially to the engineering professionals, to the engineers, all the tools and the skills necessary to orient the companies in order to go further in their digital transformation. From the part of the administration, from the part of the General Secretary of Industry and Small and Medium firms, we already a year and a half ago launched what is called the Spanish strategy for Industry 4.0, that we have named Industria Conectada 4.0. Let me comment quite briefly on firstly, the main features of this strategy, and later on a couple or three main elements and points that are at the core, at the heart of this strategy. When talking about the key elements of the strategy, first of all, we think that this is a comprehensive, a global strategy. So what we try to do was not only to face and consider the industrial part of this new revolution, but we also wanted to talk about awareness, to talk about capabilities, skills, also to mention how firms should go in order to put in practice and implement this digital transformation. So in summary, we wanted to give this comprehensive and holistic perspective of what Industry 4.0 means for Spanish companies and to a certain extent for some extent for the Spanish economy. Also, we in this strategy, what we try to do is to put at the heart of it the Spanish company. So we think that this strategy has sense only if it may help the Spanish company to go further in the digital transformation and to be successful in this new industrial revolution. Thirdly, we begin to work with the framework of a PPP, so the so-called public-private partnership. We consider that is the public administration who has to give the fair boost to this strategy, but we can understand the strategy without the participation of all the agents of the private sector. And in this sense, we launched the strategy, actually the first steps of the elaboration of the strategy with a private partnership with 3 Spanish firms, as you already know, Telefónica, Indra, and Banco de Santander. Okay, let me also quite briefly to comment on the key aspects that, in my opinion, are the ones more relevant, more significant of this strategy. First of all, we think that it's very important everything that has to do with awareness. What we've seen is that despite the message of the importance of this revolution is little by little going to Spanish firms, we still see that there is a certain lack of knowledge of the effects and the consequences of this strategy. So we think that it's very important to convey to Spanish companies how much is at stake, in this case, how much this industrial revolution means, and that they have to begin to work as soon as possible in order to be successful. Also, not only awareness, but everything related to capabilities, to skills, to education is another key point of the strategy, something that obviously we can do alone from the Ministry of Economy and Industry. We have to work together with other areas of the Spanish administration, education, the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Employment, and with this aim, we are working, trying to, building working groups with them in order to advance also in this part of the strategy. Secondly, we believe that the strategy is deeply related to everything that means collaboration. So we can't understand Industry 4.0 if we don't understand that the new way of working is collaboration. In this sense, we believe that any collaborative ecosystem and also any collaborative platform is one of the keys for the successful development of the strategy. In third place, as I also already mentioned, we have tried to put the company at the heart of the initiative. So we have developed a couple of instruments, of programs that try to support and to help Spanish company in their way forward the digital transformation of their companies. We have launched a month ago, more or less, the so-called ADA program, which is a self-diagnosis of the digital situation of the firms. We're going to launch, we hope, in the next month, another program that we have called Activa Industria, also trying to support firms with personalized consulting services, trying the goal is the same, trying to support them and to help them to go forward in terms of digitization. And finally, another point, another relevant point of our strategy is everything that has to do with the governing model. So how we are going to structure the governance of the strategy in order to reach the goals that we pretend to reach, and also in order to be successful in the implementation of the strategy and the implementation of the digital transformation for Spanish firms. So, in summary, we believe that digitization is not an option. We believe that digitization is a need. The industry of the future has to go through digitization, and every firm should have in mind this new situation and how they can adapt, they should adapt to it. So just to sum up and to finish, I would like to invite all of you to join our strategy, Industria Conectada 4.0, in order to make it possible that Spain can successfully adapt to this fourth industrial revolution, and we can be at the vanguard of digitization in Europe. Thank you very much.
Sí, pero
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We will have 3 roundtables. The first one, implementation of Industry 4.0 in Spain and Europe. The first one, Mr. Luis Vilches Collado. Luis Vilches Collado is the president of the Asociación de Ingenieros Navales de España. Mr. Jaime de Rábago Marín, professor of the Universidad Pontificia de Comillas and Vice President of the Asociación Nacional de Ingenieros de ICAI. Mr. Carlos Loureiro is President of the Portuguese National Committee of FEANI, and Mr. Aris Chatsidakis, Technical Chamber of Greece. Luis Vilches, the first, please.
Thank you very much, Manolo. In the starting session, we have been talking about the very big changes that we are going to face, and I would like to start with a very shocking video in which we are going to realize how the changes are going to be presented. A ver si me apaño con esto. Jaime está por ahí. No, Jaime. A ver, si le importa lo pone en marcha, vida adelante.
Bien. Bueno, disculparme el video chiste. Sorry for this video joke, but I wanted to emphasize that nothing is going to be as it has been so far. And it is very relevant in order to face the future. Over the last 3 years, we have been working at the Instituto de Ingeniería de España and in Unión Profesional de Colegios de Ingenieros, UPCI, to convert the work of the agenda for strengthening the industrial sector developed in the previous government legislature into a Pacto de Estado por la Industria, a state pact for industry, for future legislatures, no matter who is in charge of the government then. I was elected to chair the ad hoc working group created by Instituto and UPCI to coordinate and promote actions to convince the government, political parties and trade unions about the opportunity and the need for signing a state pact for industry. This last week, the working group has been renovated with nearly 40 engineers from all branches to continue working after this goal and cooperating with our government for translating the pact into specific actions. Instituto and UPCI are professional engineers bodies with a membership of more than 100,000 engineers of the 9 regulated branches. Members are spread through the country and abroad, working in all industrial sectors and both in the central administration and in regional governments. They are at technical and management levels and in many cases in the top management of the most relevant Spanish industrial groups. We are also united with our colleagues group in INGITE and who jointly with Instituto de Ingeniería de España are the national representatives at FEANI, organizer of this event. Our membership and participation and collaboration in UPCI and Instituto is as individual engineers who put their talent, knowledge and experience on a non-lucrative basis represented in Instituto and UPCI for the benefit of the civil society. We give our best opinion free of any conflict of interest, neither from political, economic, or business aspects. This is not an event as others, but we want to play a civil society and from the engineering world a clear role in the future, trying to provide viability and economic stability, and therefore also from the social point of view to our country and to Europe. There are many occasions in which a particular and reasonable demand does not appear with such a good opportunity in time and schedule as this proposal does for the state pact for the industry in the Horizon 2020 plus. The European Union, central and autonomous governments, trade unions, businessmen, engineers, economists, and many other professions and organizations related and committed with the industry mostly agree to support the pact proposal. Furthermore, the world economy in its more global sense is at a turning point with technological advances of so high caliber and uncertainty that somehow put all countries back in a new zero base in front of the fourth industrial revolution with the 4.0 that we will comment in more detail later on. The Internet of Things, 3D printers, big data, and so on. These innovations are already beginning to flood all of us in a great tsunami for which we must be prepared and for which we need a deep and strategic plan for the industry, as we have been proposing over the last 3 years. If we had to summarize in only one sentence the scope of the pact, I would say that with this pact, the future of the Spanish and European economy are going to recover significantly industrial activity as a key factor in creating a stable and better quality employment and will bring more social stability to our countries and therefore a better performance against potential future crises. This proposal of a state path for industry has been endorsed without major objections and a high level of acceptance by all parties involved. This pact, the previous considerations, the analysis of the economy's structure of most advanced countries around us highlights the need to increase the participation of industrial activity to 20% of GDP. The advantages of achieving this level of industrialization are well known. More and better jobs quality, more stable economic system, and better performance against the crisis, and with greater interaction and strengthening of research and technology areas enable the improvement of knowledge and competitiveness in international markets. Our proposal. According to the previous considerations already outlined above, representatives of political parties, economic organizations, and trade unions, signatories of what is proposed to sign this pact, declare the urgent need to strengthen the industry and the productive sector of our country so as to establish the basis for a greater balance of our economic and social structure, raising awareness to the society of the importance of this challenge and promoting actions on the following key areas. Whereas industrial policy must be a priority for a modern enterprising and enabled state, the current General Secretariat of Industry must be upgraded to the rank of Secretariat of State, with sufficient authority for the development of this pact, harmonizing and properly coordinating all skills related to the industry, with particular emphasis on a unified and coordinated government-wide policy for the sake of a better country competitiveness. Promotion programs and support for innovation and technology-based entrepreneurship should be assigned to the Secretary of State for Industry, updating and absorbing competences and responsibilities assigned to national entities like the SEDETI, and recovering the management of industrial enterprises participated by the SEPI, state-owned companies, in addition to coordinating the competences transferred to the autonomous communities, thus avoiding undesired border effects. Regarding the interaction between industrial policy and energy policy, and this is a very difficult point, any design of the second, energy, should seek at least not penalize the first, the industry. Such a design must be sustainable over time, compatible with the fight against climate change, and in favor of a low-carbon economy seeking a balanced and realistic energy mix, without discarding or underutilizing any possible source of energy available in our country. The measures promoted by this pact must be coordinated with the industrialization strategy by the European Union in the 2020 horizon, taking into account that the need for any proposed legislation and/or financing under this new Spanish policy has to be evaluated on their impact on competitiveness and employment. It should make a specific consideration of the Spanish industrial, small and medium-sized enterprise, what we call in Spanish the Pymes, as a core support of its economy, requiring a clear improvement in efficiency and proper sizing. We mean more middle and than small. Action programs for a strategic sector must be defined and developed after selecting them with objective criteria based on technological capabilities and our existing competitive advantages in our country. For example, those sectors that have survived the crisis or those in which there is greater production potential and more prospects for generating sustainable and quality employment, or more in line with the project country vision, among others. The 4.0 is the great opportunity that, if we know how to manage, can make both Spain and the European Union recover industrial activity again. So we must say to our engineers to do our part, and we have to put pressure as civil society to which we belong, and make sure that the politicians and the government fulfill their role and met with their obligations. Thank you. Jaime, over to you.
Thank you, Luis. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. You are very welcome, and thank you very much for the Instituto de Ingeniería, for INGITE, and for FEANI for organizing this event, which we think is very interesting, not only for Spain, but for the whole Europe. I have prepared a presentation, and while we see this in the screens, as Luis have said, I will comment on the Pact of State for Industry in Spain. Let me have, thank you very much. The agenda of my presentation will be the following. What do for Industry 4.0? Previous considerations for the Pact of State, something that Luis has already said. Basic access and main measures for this Pact of State related to Industry 4.0. We used to have in Spain a famous writer called Francisco Umbral, who always said that he has come to every, or has gone to every TV program to sell his book. Our book is right now the Pact of State for Industry. When I say our book, I say the book of the Instituto de Ingeniería and the UPCI, Unión Profesional de Colegios de Ingenieros de España. So, but previous to that, what is exactly Industry 4.0? Well, we consider that there has been a great evolution since 2 centuries ago, or from the 19th century, 20th century, and today, from the first mechanic loom in the early 1800s, then the chain production, the invention of electricity in the 1900s, and then the evolution through 3.0 and 4.0, where we are now. It can be defined as an industrial model in which innovation is collaborative, productive means are connected, supply chains are integrated, and distribution channels are digital. All these oriented to a personalized, intelligent product and allowing the generation of new business models. This is really an intelligent and connected industry. What we are doing in Europe, we are doing a lot of things. It's clear that every country, nearly every country in Europe, has his own model or program. You see in the screen, Industrie du Futur in France, Industry 4.0, MADE, Industria 4.0 in Spain, Piano Nacional Industria. So every country, more or less, has launched his own initiative, being absolutely conscious about the importance of developing this. According to the European Commission, there is a clear opportunity. The digitization of products and services could bring to industry more than 110 billion a year in Europe over the next 5 years. The target for the European Union is reinforcing EU's competitiveness in the field of digital technologies and ensure that all Europe, from any sector or place, regardless their size, can fully benefit from the digital innovation. And the commitment until now are 5 billion in the next 5 years in public and private investment. Analyze and adapt the legislative framework all around Europe, and of course, strengthen the coordination of efforts in the field of training and quality employment in this digital age. What about Spain? The General Director, Mario Buisán, has explained a little bit what they are doing. We are absolutely aware of the priority about Industria 4.0 in the Ministry of Economy, Industry and Competitiveness. And according to Randstad Research last year, digitization will generate 1.25 million skilled jobs over the next 5 years in Spain. And according to Siemens Spain, digitization could imply an increase of 120 billion over gross added value in 2025 in the country's main industrial sector. So it's clear that it is a big, big opportunity for us. And we are very aware of the importance of launching these initiatives. According to the what we are seeing with the ministry or strategies regarding this Industry 4.0, you can see that there are strategic areas in different action plans. Awareness and training, so communication, dissemination, academic and practical training, then collaborative environments and platforms, creation of those, encouraging digital enablers, the ADA project that General Director has said before, with support for technology-based companies, and of course, support for the digital evolution in terms of funding, of course, and regulatory framework and standardization. So this is what we have seen until now in terms of Industry 4.0, at least in our country. But as Luis have explained, we have been, when I mean we, the Instituto de Ingeniería de España and the Unión Profesional de Colegios de Ingenieros, we have been working during the last 3 years, now this summer will be 3 years, with this Pact of State for Industry. We consider this very important for the future of our country. And you see that there are several advantages of being more industrialized, more and higher qualified employment, greater stability of the economy facing new crises that will surely come, and of course, greater interaction between research and technology areas. This is the previous consideration for the pact. Then the basics as access has been explained thoroughly by Luis, creation of a Secretary of State of Industry, not only Secretaría General de Industria, programs for innovation and technology-based entrepreneurship, the tension between industrial and energy policy is very complicated, but at least the second shouldn't penalize the first one, the industry. Then coordination with the European industrialization strategy, the consideration of industrial SMEs, which are quite different from services SMEs, and of course, development of action programs on strategic sectors. So the main measures, I will summarize them, are, or we have structured them in 5 big areas: innovation, financing, training and employment, administration and legislation, and competitiveness. Regarding innovation area, which is more related with Industry 4.0, we want to promote what we have called in Spanish I+3D. In English, it shouldn't work, is research, development, demonstration, and takeoff. In Spanish, is despegue. Promoting an efficient management of intellectual and industrial property. Then strengthen, of course, public-private collaboration programs of R&D. Then, of course, make existing R&D infrastructures available to companies, experimental centers, advanced demonstration centers, unique scientific and technological facilities, etc. And of course, promoting a national technology transfer network that can support in earlier stages of the technology-based companies, those with have more market risk. And of course, define and develop the digital industrialization plan, which has been described before. Then regarding financing area, we want to promote the non-conventional financing for SMEs, regardless and more than the traditional banking industry, strengthening existing private equity instruments and strengthen the technology transfer process, then promoting the national warranty system for SMEs, especially for industrial SMEs, those who need support for getting finance, and of course, improve the taxation on investment in order to attract capital specifically for the productive economy. For the training and employment area, very important, we have to promote this dual training, more importantly in this new digital area, between university degrees and professional and practical training, with a reinforcement of trainees and internships. Foster the specifically industrial entrepreneurial spirit, which has a special difficulty, and nowadays it has been banalized, if you understand the term of entrepreneurship, at least in Spain. Every young people can launch a new business, and when we're talking about industry, it's much more difficult than it seems. And of course, carry out a permanent monitoring and study of professional qualifications based on the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and develop and update employability maps of university degrees. For administration and legislation area, there are three main measures to be taken. First, encourage innovative public procurement from the central administration, with fostering the early demand for technology and innovative products. Then to progress in the development and implementation of a true market unity, which has become a real problem, at least in Spain, not only dual or duplication, but multiplication of bureaucracy and administrative procedures. And of course, encourage the work of commercial and industrial diplomacy, both in embassies and in commercial offices, systematizing permanent and sectoral information of opportunities for industry. And finally, regarding competitiveness area, we should promote temporary stimulus plans in sectors with a driver effect, those more developed and high technology, and supporting the improvement of these technology and industrial equipments and processes. Develop the intermodality in transportation, not only rail transportation, but also air transport and maritime transportation, both short distance and large lines. Complete the reform of the electricity sector, big issue. Making compatible the economic and environmental sustainability of the system with the aim of preserving the competitiveness of the industry, reducing the energy cost, and of course, promoting business decisions that imply increasing the average size of SMEs in this new era of digitization. For closing my intervention, I would like to underline the words of Luis. We have been working this with all political parties, with the administration, with the representatives of companies, and we haven't found any red line. We have found a lot of comments, but no red lines. So we think that it is quite possible to sign this in the near future. We hope that will be the case. Thank you very much.
Now we pass the word to Carlos Loureiro, President of the Portuguese National Committee of the FEANI.
Thank you. First of all, I want to address all of you, and especially to this session promoters, and especially to President of the Spanish Committee, FEANI, my best greetings. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I speak about the implementation of our program in Portugal about Industry 4.0. I'll speak a little bit about Europe, about our strategy in Portuguese, in Portugal, and also about our scientific environment to the implementation of our program. About Europe, in the industrial point of view, we think we have two parts of Europe, Germany and some eastern countries, where the industrial sector has increased its share of added value and productivity in recent years. The other side, France, United Kingdom, and our southern countries, with a path of deindustrialization since 2000. We start from this situation. We must reindustrialize, but reindustrialization of Europe in a process we call Industry 4.0 will be much more than locating European industrial models that have been relocated, based on competitiveness factors such as cheap labor. The industrialization of these countries will have to be based on new foundations and take into account the factors of change, scientific development and other changes for the evolution of the European economy in the next years. Speaking about Portuguese initiative, our initiative is systematized in something like 60 measures of public and private initiatives that will impact on more than 50,000 companies operating in Portugal. I must to tell you that in our country we have a population of about 10 million inhabitants. And in an initial phase, will allow to requalify and train more than 20,000 workers in digital skills, competencies. Our strategy will mobilize up to 2.30 billion of the European funds and investment funds as incentives to raise awareness, adoption, and massification of technologies in the next 4 years. Under those 60 measures, it is planned to inject into our economy up to 4.5 billion euros investment in the resources relevant to our digital transformation. Some examples of measures: digital skills program to enable by 2020 another 20,000 people in information and communication technologies. Technical courses, revision of the portfolio professional technical courses in line with the demand of new competence by the companies in the scope of our digitalization of our economy. Learning factories, creation of physical infrastructures with technological equipment that recreate business environments. International missions, national missions led by representatives of our government with a view to the sharing of products and services of our Industry 4.0 developments. Acceleration, incubation, and prototyping support for technological startups to provide the industry both hardware and software in transforming ideas into products, product development, and also in the scale-up phase. Startups. Our strategy will take place in a scientific environment that shows evidences of increasing dynamism, both in terms of number of initiatives and the number of university enterprise partnerships. I include some references to several studies. The first one by Dunn and Bradstreet, referring that in March 16, we have 35,000. It was the number of startups that were created every year in Portugal. The number of those dedicated to technology is still small, something like 2.5%. Another study by Startup Europe Partnership on the vitality of the startup sector in Portugal indicates that we had already 40 scale-up startups with an investment of at least $1 million over the last 5 years, having already raised more than 166 million euros from venture capital. The third one from Microsoft points out that this number is likely to grow in the short term, as 24 other startups have already attracted more than $500,000 euros and are on the way, dollars, and are on the way, so that in the short term they can also be considered scale-ups. And to finish, a reference to important stimulus to which I attach great importance in last year and in this year and in the next year. Web Summit as a new address, Lisbon. And I include here one declaration of the CEO, the Web Summit CEO, about the choice of Lisbon. It is very important, and I'm sure it will be very important to stimulate our activities in this branch. Thank you.
And now we pass the word to Aris Sasidakis. Have I pronounced well?
Perfect for Spanish.
You
know,
from the technical chamber
it doesn't open. This? Okay, this is the other button. Okay. So good evening, dear colleagues. And I have to confess a confession to make, just beginning my intervention. I have nothing to do with industry. It is by coincidence that I am in this panel. But as a guest here, I didn't want it to trouble the whole program. I come from the construction sector. So I suppose that in industry we could also include the construction sector, but it is a little bit a different case. And so the whole Industry 4 project is not foreign to me, but I cannot speak about it. Moreover, that Greece is not now in the avant-garde of such a process. I mean, the economic situation, the general economic situation does not help such policies to flourish, because we know, we follow the community policies about industry, but it's not Greece that you are expecting to have, spectacular things to see. So I will try to say a few words about the construction sector, and which I think is, in a sense, in the broader meaning of industry, in which, as you know, there is a strategy of the Commission for the construction sector 2020. Similar to the project for the industry, but it is oriented to the construction sector, which has its own special aspects. Between of course, the things that this strategy is trying to foster, it is the digitalization of the construction sector. We all know that a lot of things have been done in this section to the construction industry. I have started my professional career with just the logarithmic ruler. I had to work not even with a small computer, but with a logarithmic rule. And now computation, I mean analysis and computation is no more a problem. I mean, nobody is speaking, how can I solve this? It is solved if you have a good and true model to feed to the analysis. So all things have changed since the time that I was launching my career. And I come to the small video that our colleague here shown us. My generation was not, for my generation, it was not so easy to implement all this digital way of thinking, but we were obliged to do it. Some years ago, I felt like I belonged to history. I mean, my profession comes from the first or the second industrial revolution, which has nothing to do with things like this. And we had, it was very hard to adapt to this new era, but we did. And now we don't speak only about a good, best model of the physical facility we want to construct, even a building or infrastructure, etc. But we have incorporated to the model all the other aspects of time, cost, who is going to use it, let's say from design to construct, operate, maintain, and demolish is just one model for the whole life cycle of a building or an infrastructure. And in this model, everyone can take his part. I mean, it's open to all stakeholders. I mean, in the same model, the public authorities could put their demand, the designer could put his own contribution, the contractor to make the whole plan easy to construct, and then the users, the maintenance, all the costs to be just in one model. This is quite a new idea. We are not, so familiar to that, but this is the future. So I think that maybe FEANI could stipulate the standardization of a BIM, how it's called, the Building Information Modeling for Europe, because each country now is trying to do its own building model, which is not, of course, what the United Europe idea is, because if you change from country to country, you cannot use the same tool. It was the same idea that we are trying to have the same construction codes. So in which country you work, you can use the same regulations. So it will be a big achievement if our community of engineers, I must say, would foster the idea that we could try to elaborate one unique building information model on the construction sector. So I hope that I was not quite out of it because I felt that I hesitated to come to the step, but I was convinced that maybe this aspect was not in the core of the other presentations. So thank you for your patience.
Well, we have my apologize because the Manuel Campo Vidal last minute unforeseen unexpected question has to go. So we start a very brief time for debate about this roundtable, and because we have the no time for develop this. But any question about the Industry 4.0, please?
A very general question to Javier. Well, it's very nice to listen about the pact. It's impossible to say no to all the things that you propose. But the question is, do you have any assessment and do you have figures what you try to get with the pact? I mean, so not only to what's your wish, but also what you are going to get in figures, given numbers. So we are going to do this, we are going to cut, and so on and so on.
Well, you are referring to the state, the Pact of State. This is not a question for us, it's a question for the administration. Okay? So if we finally sign the agreement, the first thing should be to enter into the different measures that we have described there and then put a number about money and time. This is the big issue after the, of course, targets, milestones, measures, so all these things to develop the state, the Pact of State. But the very first thing is to sign it, which is not going to be easy, but what we are quite positive about this, Luis.
I think that whatever figure increase the actual 12-13% contribution from the industry to the GDP is going to be better than we have now. Then if we are able to convince, and the draft that we have been exchanging with the administration, it contemplates to reach the 20% of contribution to the GDP. That is something incredible. That would be more than enough.
My comment is not only to that general outcome about what is the rate of the industry in the GDP, but also what you propose a set of measures, very precise, encourage this, do this, promote this. So at the end, what we try to get a concerned outcome, something as a consequence of that measure. And the question is about more detail. When you go in the, because very often the important points are in the detail. That's something that I ask you for that. Yeah.
But Javier, what I can tell you is that fortunately, this draft is now on the table of the Minister de Guindos, and the Guindos has said that is a good idea. And for us, it's enough so far.
Okay, thank you very much. No time, we have over time, but I ask for your applause for this, colleagues. Well, the following table, please go to the ahead to the table. Okay, let me introduce the following roundtable that we are in the company with the company of our colleagues from the following companies and countries. First of all, Mr. Eduardo Montes, my friend, Eduardo Montes, my boss, you know, Eduardo Montes is the president of UNESA. As you know very well, UNESA is a professional association that is exactly in charge of the defense, information, communications of the whole electrical sector in our country. It's very important, this position, and very in relation with the second table. Also, we have the opportunity to listen to Mr. José Casas Marín from Spain. He is the General Manager of Institutional Relations and Regulation of Endesa. You know very well this operation in our country of electricity. And so, nous avons l'opportunité aussi de parler avec Monsieur Gabriel Enrist. Mr. Gabriel Enrist is the representative member of the European Monitoring Committee of FEANI, and he's a member of the France. Also, thank you very much to be with us. And last but not least, our friends also, Stefan Hunestrad is not an engineer, he's an architect. It's a pity, he's not an engineer. He's an architect, but he's really a very high expert, very deep knowledge of the smart grid. As you know, the smart grid is all the programs, smart programs to obtain the savings and efficiency in the electrical area. Please, we start in this order. Please, 5 minutes each one, more or less, please, because if no, we have not possibility to give questions, but 5 or 10 minutes, no worry, 10 minutes. And in this table of energy efficiency and electricity management systems in Spain and Europe.
Okay, thank you very much, Jose. It's true that we have been friends for a quite long while. Well, I think that energy efficiency is one of the key points in terms of how to decarbonize the Earth. And as you know, that's one of the points which has been are in the center of every political discussion nowadays. It is true that electricity is only part of energy, and it's not the part which is more, let's say, critical in terms of decarbonization. But the thing is that it is the one who made the most. Well, if we go, I think that the good news is that we are improving. I mean, and we are improving in terms of energy efficiency, and not only in Spain, but all over Europe. If you see in this overhead, the first table is the one which compare, if you want, the primary energy intensity in European countries. And you see that we have been improving continuously in the last 15 years, and essentially Spain has improved a lot. You see that we are below, far below the average in Europe. That means that our consumption, energy consumption, primary energy consumption by unit of GDP is under the average or below the average of Europe. If we take the final energy consumption, which is extremely important as well, and you see the breakdown, the distribution, you see that the steel, oil is more or less 50% of the totality. And electricity plays a big role, but it's only 25%. The thing is that if you take the effort that we did in terms of decarbonization, even if we represent only 25% of the final energy, we have done 80% more or less of the effort which drove us to this quite good situation in terms of decarbonization. And then if you take the last one, I think that the last one is something that we have discovered not very long ago, but which is very important as well. Normally, the GDP growth and the consumption of electrical energy has been always run in parallel. We used to say that the first indicator of what's going on with the GDP growth was the electricity consumption, and that was the case. But you see that that has changed in the last couple of years. And from 2013 on, you see that the GDP has been growing and the electricity consumption has decreased. And this year again, I mean 2016, we saw exactly the same thing. We have had a growth of 0, more or less, in electrical consumption, but the growth of the GDP has been more or less 2.5, 2.6. That means essentially that the electricity or the energy efficiency is improving and improving a lot, essentially in terms of electricity. I'm going to talk of something which is not only, I will say, very well considered, but which is the key point for me in every electrical system. That's not generation, not at all. That's not commercialization, but it's distribution. I think that we don't consider the distribution network as one of the key points, or in my opinion, the key point on the functioning on an electrical system. And that has a lot of things to do, what I'm going to comment, with Industry 4.0 and essentially with smart grids. Well, that used to be the distribution network. That was just wires going from generation to the last consumer. And in fact, that was absolutely passive. And that was, as you see in the overhead, building and connecting. That was unidirectional. That means you got the energy from the center, from the power plant, and that goes to your home, full stop. That was just a neutral market facilitator, a very low risk and very low innovation business, and the only things which that must ensure was system security, reliability, and quality. I've said only, but that's a lot. If you consider that the quality of the Spanish network is reliability 99.39%. That means that thanks really to the distribution network, we get this kind of stability. Maybe in a couple of seconds, the power plant, which is tied to this room, can drop off, can stop. But that doesn't matter at all, because immediately you will get the electricity coming from wherever in the country. We have a very good network, but from up to now, quite passive. What's going to happen in the future? Well, something is going to happen. Why? Because the electrical system is changing. And that is changing a lot. If you see what is happening, on one hand, we have a lot of renewable, which are enter the system, and they have to enter more and more in the system. Most of the renewables are directly tied to the distribution network. That means you have distributed generation, and at the same time, you have more and more distributed consumption. And with the electrical vehicle, that will happen even more. How has that changed the network? On one hand, we are not any longer just a connector. We are connecting and managing. Secondly, we have reverse flow. That's not any longer unidirectional. That means that the customer is able, through the distribution network, of managing as well his consumption, depending, among other things, on the price, market price, second by second. Is a neutral market facilitator, but at the same time, the system operator is supporting the electrification. That means the distributor is not any longer only a network manager, he's at the same time a consumption manager. We are undertaking much higher risk, but still ensuring the same levels of reliability and quality, and a big chunk of innovation. I will talk in a few seconds about the smart meters, and that will change this simply wire network to a smart grid. I don't like very much this name of a smart grid, but that's like Industry 4.0. I don't like that as well, but that doesn't matter at all. Well, a smart meter. One part which is going to be essential in this bilateral flow, in this network which is making the consumer able of managing his own consumption, yeah, is based, among other things, on the smart meters. You know that there is a directive in Europe with the rollout of a smart meter, which is compulsory to be finished by year 2020, with one exception, or two exceptions, and that's Spain. In Spain, the law fixed 2018, and we are quite advanced on that. If you see the table, I will not break that down by companies. You see that in the you see that here. I will not break down by companies, but you can see that on the overhead, and you see that in average, we have already deployed by the end of by February of 2017, we have already deployed 84% of the totality of the smart meters which are going to be deployed in Spain. That means that by the end, with absolutely surely, by the end of 2018, the totality of the consumers in Spain are going to have smart meters functioning and connected to the grid. Well, one thing which is quite important is that if we want to really decarbonize or go on with the decarbonization process, one of the things that we have to do, in our opinion, is to electrify more and more the system. Among other things, we consider, and as I haven't a long time, I'm going to concentrate on a couple of points. We consider as essential the electromobility. That means the electrical or hybrid, essentially electrical car. On one hand, that will enhance a lot the possibilities of decarbonization, of decarbonizing transport. And on the other hand, that will improve a lot the possibilities of having far away from the cities the production, and not just in the city. What do we need for that? On one hand, we need a charging points infrastructure, and then we have here a vicious circle. On one hand, if you ask the ministry, for instance, why in hell we don't have yet charging points, they will say, well, we haven't electrical cars, and that's true. But on the other hand, if we haven't electrical cars, what in hell do we need I mean, the two things has got to develop at the same time. But I think, or we think, that that's essential. The smart charging process, as every single thing in the new distribution network, is going to be bidirectional. That means that you can charge the batteries of your car, and at the same time, you can decharge part of the batteries to the network. That means that that will be one essential part of the network, and that will give some flexibility, because the charge normally is going to happen in valley points, and the consumption is going to happen when the electricity is peaking. Then, in our opinion, that's one of the points which will soften a lot the process. And then, I'm afraid, last but not least, sometimes we think that we are improving in terms of efficiency more than the reality. The fraud is increasing and increasing in extremely in our opinion, way. That means that if you, one figure, which is not official, but that's a figure that I have in my brain right now, is that the fraud represents more or less 500 million euros per year in Spain. If you think on the el bono social, etc., only solving that will help a lot in this discussion that we have nowadays. And when I say fraud, I'm not talking about very poor people which try to get electricity wherever they can. That's not good, but that's the minority. The majority takes place in small businesses and small industries. And I think that that's one of the points that we are discussing with the administration, because we need very strict rules, a very clear law, and means for being able of stopping that things, which is really one of the cancers of our system. And I think that I've spent my 10 minutes. Thank you, Jose.
Okay, good afternoon. First of all, thank you to FEANI for the invitation to speak and to present the view of Endesa about the skill of the European engineers. The organization has asked to me to speak about energy efficiency, and I am going to speak about energy efficiency inside the one of the main drivers of one of the main, if not the main, challenge that we are tackling with this is the decarbonization. The second challenge that we have in a company like Endesa is the digitalization, but we have been listening to the speaker in the previous roundtable. So decarbonization is. Let me. Can I? Well, decarbonization is the main challenge that this humanity have, and we have agreed on December of 2015 a global agreement to achieve in 2050 zero emission of CO2. That means that we have to change all the way to do the things in our economy. This is a breakdown made by Deloitte. Deloitte is a consulting firm that present the figures of the emission of the different sectors in Spain, and you can see that the 240 million tons of CO2 emitted by Spain, by the energy sector of Spain in 2013, coming from in a 55% from the oil products, the consumption of oil products, and the 24% from the power generation. That means that the 75 or 80% of the emission comes from the transportation and comes from the generation. So if we want to reach 2050 without emission of CO2, we have to achieve the goals to have no emission in power generation in 2050, no emission in transportation in 2050, no emission in residential services and industry sector in 2050. That means that we have to change the way to do the things from now to 2050. And the way to do that is mainly by three main drivers. The first is to increase the percentage of free emission generation that we have in our matrix of generation. The second is to switch of energy carrier, to pass from energy carrier with higher emission factor to other with lower emission factor. And the third is having a more energy efficiency in the way to do the things, to decrease the energy intensity that we have in the in our economy. Well, describing these drivers, I think that we can see what is the change that we are facing in our company. The first is to electrificate the demand and to switch to get the switching from the current energy carriers to another with lower emission. And this means, as Eduardo has said, increasing the electrical vehicle penetration, achieving a modal shift of heavy transport, stepping up the change to energy carriers with lower emission in the residential, industrial, and service sector. That means that we have to change the heating of our houses, the process of on our industry. All of this we have to change from now to 2050. The second important part is to get a free emission in our generation fleet, and that means that we have to increase our renewables generation plans, and to be all of that, this 100% of the generation asset in 2050. And that means that we have to go through this period using the technology that we have now, waiting the innovation in batteries and the backup technologies, well, and investing all the financial capability in renewables, maintaining all the fleet that we have now. And last, energy efficiency in new building, refurbishing a building that we have now, inventing or investing in new process of our industries. The last one, that is about the deployment of a smart grid that Eduardo has explained very well previously, about to give intelligence to our distribution network, is the fourth driver. But I think that Stefan is going to speak about that. And this is my vision, and I think that I comply with my 5 minutes of speech. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. That's an honor for me to be here, and I thank the President to request me to do a little job so that I can give you some information. And my choice was to look for figures so that we can complete what you just said. I didn't know what you were saying, but I think that's a good compliment. So the item I'm going to go through are on the screen. Nuclear power in the world number and power nuclear reactors, France reactor, France energy transition schedule, France electrical power in 2015, French wind power installation, France and Europe wind power 2015, renewable energy pricing. No, that's not it. Okay. Electrical part in French energy consumption, electrical energy per use in France, electrical part in world energy consumption, French electrical consumption evolution, world energy consumption in 2013, and world primary energy reserves, and some conclusions. Here you have the nuclear power plant in the world. So you can see that mainly you have the eastern part of the States, Europe, Japan, some in China, India, and in the south part, not very many. You have here the evolution of the number of reactors in the past years. So you can see that approximately 30 years ago, which is 87, we reached more than 400 reactors in the world. And since then, things didn't change very much. And the red line, that's the electricity production that has increased some because the power of the reactor have been increased in the new installation when the old one were dismantled. Here you have the France reactor. So the light blue, that's 900 megawatts. The dark blue, that's 1300 megawatts. The pink is 50 megawatts, and the last one, the light pink, that's 1600 megawatts, which is not in place yet. That's the one that is, we cannot get it anyway. That's Flamanville, you might have heard about it. The recent government said that what we have, the nuclear is 75% of the energy in France installed, and they said that in 2025 we'll come down to 50%. But nobody said how it's going to be done. So I took on my electricity bill all last year, and I found that the figures of that year, 90% was coming from nuclear, 7% from renewable, including 6 hydraulic, 1% coal, 1% oil, 1% gas, total 53 reactors, and 63 gigawatts, which is 20% of the world electrical nuclear power. The world electrical nuclear power being 350 gigawatts. Here you have the French wind power installation since 2003. So the gray bar, that's the installation every year, and the black curve is the what's on. As you know, the wind part is giving you energy only if you have wind. So if you don't have wind, you need to have some other system to compensate, and you have to have that in mind anyway. On this renewable energy, on the wind power, we are up to 11,700 megawatts last year, and the goal is to go to 19 in 2020, but we'll see later on that for price maybe and for other reasons, we are not sure that we're going to be able to reach that. European renewable energy consumption altogether hardly reached 15% up to now. Sweden is 50, Finland 40, Austria 33%. That's the first main and good country in the system. I don't really know how they do, but that's the result, which is means that it's probably possible, but let's target. The pricing, the wind is about 80 euro per megawatt hour. For the sun, we're down to 60 up to now, and coming from 300. So the sun is recovering, probably partially because of China that is producing and bringing the price down. And we expect in 2025, 50 euro per megawatt hour, which is not nothing. That's costly. Here is the electrical part in energy consumption in France. So you have 45% of the energy electrical part is 45%. The oil is 30%, the gas is 14%, which all that you have 90% of the energy in France. The electrical use in France, you have mainly housing and industry. Housing is 67 and industry 24. Steel industry is on the left with 2%. I don't know what's separated. Anyway, if you're interested, you can find that in the EDF website, the French electrical producer. The electrical part in world energy consumption. So remember, I said in France, the electricity was 45%. In the world, that's 18%. So we can correlate with what has been said about Spain. So oil is 40% all over the world. The next one is electricity at 18 and gas 15. That's a French electric consumption evolution. You can see that the French consumption is fairly constant for the past 10 years. It didn't increase. That's the world energy. So you have oil is the first one. The second is coal. The third one is gas. You can see the hydro, which is the blue one. The nuclear is stabilized, and the other one are trying to grow. And that's the world primary energy reserve in the world. So the main reserve is coal. We don't want to use, as said before. Oil is the second one, and gas, the third one. Conclusion. Renewable energy still has a long way to go, starting today from around 15% of world energy. The second is that the nuclear electrical power has almost not grown in the past 30 years, I would say. And the main world energy reserve today are still coal, oil, gas, not too good for the planet anyway. So we'll have to try to use other resources. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you, yeah, you can hear. Thank you for the invitation of the Instituto de la Ingeniería from FEANI and from José Javier, my great friend since many years. It's a privilege to be here to speak in front of you, and as José Javier said, I'm not an engineer, not in this context, because here I prefer to be called an architect or artist or something. But when architects are in the environment of artists, we prefer to be called engineers, to be just a little different. Okay? So thank you very much. After these excellent presentations from a both technical and market perspective, I would like to focus on one subject of the seminar, which are the skills for European engineers, engineering professionals. And I think this is an extremely important subject, as since without professionals to prepare to deploy these strategies, we won't be able to keep up with the revolution of Industry 4.0 or deploy the smart grids successfully. So we should not forget this issue, and I think it's one of the key issues and the main problems for the market today is to actually create and provide and professionals that have knowledge and courage to deploy these. And I would like to just start with a personal reflection. I live in Spain since 17 years, and I have a half Spanish family. I did my architecture career both in Spain and in Sweden, but I did my thesis and for 4 years in Stockholm, and I also worked parallelly and research and development centers, which were multidisciplinary. And what I also had the ability to do, I have a media company. For 17 years, we published daily news about technology, energy, and sustainability within the construction industry, smart grids, smart cities, and so on. So I have been able to follow the Spanish market for 17 years, both companies, technical evolution, and political strategies, and so on. So the only thing I know about this, that I know very little, because it's changing a lot. The market changed a lot. These 17 years have been increasingly changing within speed, market, and so on. So I think there are some key issues, and as some of you come from the north of Europe, and some main part here from Spain, the very south, I think there are, the longer you stay out of your own country, and especially in a country like Spain, I think you find out that the differences are even bigger. I think there are extremely big cultural differences. I think each country has good parts, and some have negative parts from a professional perspective. And I think in the north of Europe, I think the strength of the northern workforce, the youth, the students, that they are extremely well prepared. They have a global view of their life. The world is their playground. They don't know any limits. It's a very little respect for authority, and so on. So it's natural for a Swedish or other northern youth to understand, because even I was grown up with our parents working in big industrial companies worldwide. Many have friends, or my friends, their parents were working in South America, Africa, Asia, and so on. So it was natural when they worked at ABB or they worked at Ericsson or many of the other Swedish companies. So we understood that the world was the place, companies were global, and that was the way to think and work and travel. Although in the north of Europe, we're not close to the academic preparation that Spanish students have today. Spanish students are extremely well prepared academically. Their mathematics, etc. And I think that's the main reason for the success for Spanish engineers abroad, is that they have an extremely well prepared workforce. And as we were talking about this energy efficiency market, electricity market, we actually also organized congresses. We had a third Smart Grid Congress this fall. José Javier was participating in a round table, and he's about the skills. We were actually talking about that round table, about the need for professional needs for this for the engineers and all the other actors involved in the smart grid sector. The smart grids, or any other part of engineering, is actually suffering the same revolutionary change from the traditional electrical network into the smart grids. The prosumer perspective, the user perspective, we turn from an traditional energy supply chain to something that we actually don't even knew, where companies don't even participate when we had talked about blockchain initiatives in Brooklyn and other initiatives where the users themselves generate and consume the energy. So some of the conclusions from that table, I want to talk about all of them, but I think the most important word that smart grids in this context is a multidisciplinary sector with need for very big variety of professionals. There's a need for also for the public administration to define new professions prepared for the smart grid sector as well as any other sector. And also, as José Javier mentioned in the beginning of this seminar, the need of long life learning. It has to improve, otherwise an increasing part of the current workforce will find themselves out of work, and that's nothing that we wish. And to these conclusions from that Congress, I'd just like to add some things that, of course, we all know about them, but it's difficult to generate professionals that know about artificial intelligence, big data, IoT, blockchain, cybersecurity, just to mention some of these these are very technical. But also, when we're talking about the smart meters and the consumption, we need to talk about issues as privacy, usability, and in those areas we need to include psychologists, sociologists, and a lot of new professionals that have to be involved in these teams. And I personally believe that the big part of the success of the companies that will continue on their market, it depends on the capacity to respond to the market and to the users, make comprehensive products, services, and so on. And I think these are, of course, together with other challenges, social, economical, political, and technical, are some of the key issues. And that's what I wanted to talk about. And but I really think we have to continue to discuss these issues.
Well, thank you very much for your very interesting explanations about the general sector of electricity in Spain and France and Europe, and also for the reference to the professionals that we are the professionals in charge of these activities. So it's your turn. It's the opportunity to give questions in relation with this in very important questions about the electricity system. Maybe done in English, peut-être faire les questions en français, y también es posible hacer las preguntas en español. Vamos.
Voy a hacerlo en espagnol. Si no, bueno, un poquito francés a lo mejor. Je vais essayer de parler en français un peu.
Merci.
Ok. La situation de la France, je ne suis pas un expertise dans l'énergie, mais je connais que vous savez déjà, à mon avis, que 90% de l'énergie vient de l'énergie nucléaire.
Yeah.
Et bien, avant la situation de globalisation et de climate change, now I'm going to speak in English. What is really the challenge in France to address this big issue? Because France is in a position where you come with a very strong nuclear power, but France had to change in terms of energy sources. What is the challenge? What's going to be happening in France? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your questions. I would say the figures I've put on the screen show us that the nuclear power plants didn't increase for these past 30 years. Okay, so we grow and didn't increase. So every country with nuclear power plant have to think about that, and they apparently decide not to move and continue in this direction. Okay, the problem is how to replace it, and how do we decarbonize doing that? And Spain didn't talk about that very much, but that's the same problem. We didn't talk about the power coming from nuclear power plants, but that's part of the problem, okay? The figure is different, but the problem is the same. So I think the right answer is to try to go in this direction, in the direction of renewable, decarbonized energy. The problem is that you cannot throw away right away the nuclear power plant because they are decarbonized and you need them, okay? So we have to work on safety as much as we can, and we have to work on renewable energy. So that's what we do. It's probably the jobs of tomorrow, but we have to find solution, and I'm sure we'll find solution, but I don't know them yet, and the same thing for both of us. Okay, I'm not sure I answer your question, but that's the best way I can do.
It's a correct question about the continuation of the activity in Garoña. I think that is a popular news because it's every day in the newspaper. But what do you think? Or are you agree with Iberdrola to go on with the Garoña activity, or is definitively finished?
Well, now we are still pending of the decision of the government. So we decided to close Garoña in 2012. After that, we asked to open again, and we are pending. We are waiting for the authorization and to know all the conditions included in the authorization. So if you wait for a long time, you can wait for a short time. So we think that it's better to wait to the decision of the government and then to take our own decision if we can go or not go ahead with Garoña. This is our...
According with the information, there is not profitable, not possible to continue because the price is very high.
Well, but this is not the problem only of Garoña. This is a problem of all the nuclear fleet. The problem is that almost the 50% of the incomes we have to dedicate it to pay taxes. So, but we don't know what is thinking the government. So we think that because of that, we have to wait and analyze if the government is analyzing the fiscal charge that the nuclear plants have. So for that, we think that it's better to wait and decide it after the decision of the government.
As you say, the government is paying the difference that you consider that they need to pay to put in loan, you will follow on.
Well, we have to analyze the decision. If the plants is profitable for the future, we have one less obstacle to take the decision. But we don't know what is thinking the government.
Any other question? Perhaps could be interesting not allow to Eduardo Montes to get out alive. Any question about the general debates about the auto-consumption future and all this kind of question, the balance of energy at home?
Well, I think that the pace of the auto consumption in Spain is quite normal. I mean, in fact, it's something which is developing. The only thing is that, and we have to be very clear on that. I mean, there are two possibilities. Either we are absolutely independent from the network, and then in this case, you can do whatever you want. I mean, the only thing is that you have to have your own backup through whatever, through batteries or whatever. But if you are using the network, yeah, then in this case, you have to pay for it. Because in fact, what you are not going to pay, I will pay for you. Then that's which is not very fair. And that's what we are calling the imposto al sol, or I don't know exactly what's the name. But this tax is the tax that you have to pay for using the network, which is going, which has been paid by all the consumers. Yeah. I don't know whether I have answered your question, but
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that that was the question.
The politician may answer the question about the prices of this, the future prices of this.
Well, the price is the price of the network is the one which is decided, in fact, by the government, because in fact, you know as well as I do that distribution network is one of the regulated prices. That means that we get the money from the administration following their audit of the investment made in the network.
Anything else about the professionals in charge of this, the figures that have given Stefan, or is it clear? Well, we have no time for more. Thank you very much. Big applause for you. Okay, we have arrived to the third round table. Also, thank you very much for the speakers. We have arrived to the opportunity to listen about this important question that is the digitization of society, professional profiles and European engineering projects, and so on, because the digitization is absolutely transversal for all the whole activities that we can consider. For this table, we have the following speakers. First of all, first one is Mr. Javier Uceda Antolín, ex-rector, very known person in our academic and professional activities. I have had many years ago the opportunity to have with him experience in questions of international projects in microelectronics and similar. He's the very known director of our School of Industry in the Polytechnic University of Madrid and the rector of the Polytechnical University of Madrid. Thank you very much for staying here with us in discussion of digitization, because the industry, you are a very good expert, but you have chosen the digitization. It's very important. Also, Lars Funk. Lars Funk is the president, comes from Germany, is the president of the European Monitoring Committee of the FEANI. This group has been working in these days, yesterday and today morning, very wide work in the defense of the distinguish the different activities of the professional engineers in Europe. And this important committee has very long work in defending our ideas in the Federación Europea de Asociación Nacional de Engineers. He's for you the last intervention in this table, the final intervention, the conclusions and so on. And the second intervention will be for Mr. Víctor Izquierdo Loyola, is a good friend. He's the president of Comité de Ingeniería y Sociedad of this house, of this home, the Instituto de Ingeniería España, the president of this commission, a very good work. And also he's the director of Society, the ILV, Asesoramiento y Gestión. Thank you to be here. Also, the third intervention will be of Mr. Juan Gerardo Muros, Secretary of the Committee of Research, Development and Investigation, del IE, of this home also. This Committee of Engineering, also belonging to the Committee of Ingeniería y Sociedad de la Información del Instituto de Ingeniería de España. Thank you very much. We are
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for this nice presentation. Although when you said something that I am well known, I don't know exactly what you mean, but in principle, it's very nice just to listen to you and to be with you and to share with you this opportunity. Thank you very much to the organizer, to the hosting institution for inviting me to be part of this panel and with such a distinguished panelists and such a distinguished moderator. So that's my pleasure to share with you a few thoughts. I have 5 minutes. It's a short time, so I have time for a couple of ideas, no more than that. If I want to tell you more things, I need more time because the subject of the roundtable is very interesting. That what is the impact of digitalization or digitization, because both things are already used, depending on where you read this word. But anyhow, what is the impact in the society first? Number two, what is the impact in the industry? But considering the industry in general, including utilities or construction or whatever, what is the impact in engineering, professional activities? And what is the impact, if there's impact, in the university education? So I'm the only representative here from the university, and I would like to make any comment regarding this matter. So my first statement is that it's clear that digitalization or digitization is a revolution in our society. It's changing a lot of things, more than we probably think today. And there is a tremendous dynamic process in the society changing a lot of things. In the next few years, we will have different, a completely different view of our industry according to the expected changes. There is 2 or 3 driving elements in this change. Number one is we have much more data to understand what is going on, and that data is coming sometime for sensor we have everywhere, or we have the opportunity using this smart power meters that we discussed in the previous roundtable. We have more data, more information to do that. Number two is that the processing capability of those data is going, the cost is going down and down. So to have the possibility to use and to handle the data and creating value, added value, as a consequence at very low cost. And in addition to that, there is also a tremendous capacity of communication at very high speed and low cost. And this is creating new opportunities of doing the old things in a different way and doing new things that we have never done before. And this is the scenario where we have to talk about the digitalization. And we talk about, everybody, you look at many reports, and I don't want to talk about the report because they are just there. It's quite easy to find out those reports. There are a lot of information about the impact of this process in the society. And I don't want to discuss that because all these elements are included in the report, and it's very interesting to see that. To give you figures in a very, very narrow sector, for instance, if you look at the report created by a consulting company, Boston Consulting Group, about the impact of the digital technologies in engineering and construction all over the world. So it's a sector where the annual revenues are over 10 trillion US dollars. So that means it's a big sector that implies something like 6% of the GDP all over the world. And that's a big sector. But the impact of the digital technology, in principle, they assess that it's going to reduce the whole life cost of those, infrastructure or whatever they consider into this sector in the 20%. So that means that the costs are in the life cycle, including maintenance and so on and so forth. So to have a very big impact into the sector due to the digital technology. And we talk about digital technologies. We talk about, as everybody has mentioned before, big data analytics. We are talking about simulation and virtual reality. We are talking about additive manufacturing. We are talking about 3D scanning. We are talking about robotics. We are talking about embedded sensor in the infrastructure. We are talking about solutions provided from the cloud. That now, today, small companies are able to get very sophisticated services using the cloud as a common infrastructure to get such kind of services. So the revolution is there. And there is a movement everywhere trying to take advantage of the opportunities that we have and to avoid the problems created by this revolution. And this is something I've been discussing in the previous roundtable. And there are a lot of programs, the involvement of the administration, professional association. The companies are pressing, creating some interest in order to accelerate or just to modify or to conduct this process. And that's something which is happening. I don't want to talk about this. So, and there are many important concepts today, like also has been already mentioned. Internet of Things is creating a world of things connected and data, providing data to many, creating opportunities. But still, we have a lot of challenges, social challenges. I have been in the last 2 days in Graz, in Austria, in a Horizon 2020 project, 55 companies together, talking about the project is named SCOT, that stands for Secure, Connected, Trustable Things. That means that the security and trustable connection is something which is still in the heart of this, revolution. And there's a lot of interest for many companies trying to create something which is wireless, something which is secure, something which is trustable in this world. But I don't want to talk about all this, that's the first statement. So I'm going to talk about what is the impact on this revolution in the engineering profession, in the skills of engineers, and what should be the impact in education. That's and I will finish my presentation. Well, number one, so if the things are changing and the jobs are changing and the structure of the industry is going to change, it's also affecting engineering. So there is no doubt from my point of view. There is no doubt. There is a clear influence. And the question is, if we have the ability to identify what are the skills and how to prepare the current engineers or just the future engineers for this new environment that is very dynamic, that is changing a lot. And this is something that is important too. And my proposal today is my second statement, just to give you as very simple ideas, is that I do believe that we have to modify in education, in engineering, a few things. We are just in a continuous process of changes. Of course, we are just trying to modify some of the, horizontal skills. That means that we are continually modifying our programs, and we are more, learning by doing, project-oriented subject instead of the classical approach. We are preparing our engineers for a social view of their activity. At the same time, sustainability is now in the core of the education of engineers. All these things are running, and we're trying to improve. But this new revolution brings new problems, new challenges. And I would tell you that according to my view, we need additional areas where the engineers need to be prepared. And those areas are 2 or 3 bullets. Number one, we have to improve our skills in data science. That's crucial. That means mathematics, and probably more different mathematics that we have. It's becoming, and it's just very clear now, what is more or less what are the courses to be taken by the future engineers in order to be better prepared than the current engineers according to this new world where data are available. Things like, for instance, statical mechanics. What is that? It's that typically in mechanics, we try to define a model according to the real knowledge of the variables into the system, and according to the physical rule, we're able to generate a model that it tries to represent the behavior of a mechanical device. But sometimes there are a lot of levels of uncertainty into the system. It's not possible to know exactly in detail the value of the variables. And according to a statistic, there is a theory, it's possible to construct some models based on probability rather than certainty, and it's possible to construct some models in the complex system. So, number one, data science. Number two, I would suggest complex system. What is a complex system? There is a theory very well developed that the complex system is a system composed of many different parts. But this is not the difference. There are many systems with many different parts. What is the complexity is due to the interaction between this part. And when those interactions are very complex, the behavior of this system is very difficult to be predicted. And that's complex. And that's complex. And there are theories behind that is possible to deal with all this matter. And I would suggest to include some kind of things regarding this point. And those are related to things like nonlinear system. Most of our toolbox is based on linear system. So nonlinear systems gives us some additional information, adaptive system, chaotic system, etc., etc. There is something regarding the complex that is a well-defined theory that is possible to improve the skills of our engineers. Like network science. I don't know if you are familiar with there is a professor, Laszlo Barabasi, that has created a theory how to deal with networks, creating or agent-based models. That's another tool that is very important to understand what is happening in the system with a lot of interaction between different nodes in the system. So this, data science and complex system will help us in this. In addition to that, of course, if we talk about Industry 4.0, there are specific skills regarding this particular, platform will integrate data, or just what is the architecture of that, or that and that. But this, I'm not talking about those elements that, of course, we need to talk about that, but also to the basis that give to our, professional the capacity to adapt themselves to the changes in the technology, the changes in the models, to the changes in the tools. I'm going to give you an example. Let me back to become a professor, and I finish. Typically, when you have a system with a lot of non-linearities, it's very difficult to know what is going to happen when you change the input variables. Well, the stability of such kind of system was studied in the 19th century, and there was a Russian guy called Lyapunov who established exactly what are the rules to ensure that system is stable. But the problem is that to apply the rules, you need to identify what they call a Lyapunov function, which is a candidate, which is something which is very extremely difficult to apply. So the concept is nice, but the application is impossible. Today, what is new is that if you go to MATLAB, there is a process able to able to define the system. He is able to give you the solution to that problem automatically. But you need to understand what is going on. What is going on? It's not a question just to solve the problem, but also to understand what is going on. So, in summary, the revolution is there. The engineering is changing. The revolution is based in a set of drivers. Those drivers give us some additional information that we need to be prepared. I would suggest to give to our engineers some of those skills that I described so in my presentation. That's all. Thank you very much.
Well, good evening. First of all, just to say thank you to the organizers for inviting me to that round table about digital skills. I will try to be very brief. Firstly, stating some ideas about what do we mean by digital skills. At least I think we can distinguish three types of digital skills. The digital skills for all, for every citizen, which is something important because today it's difficult to enjoy what offers us society if we don't have digital skills. Secondly, digital skills for you as somebody who is working, who is part of an organization or enterprise. Digital skills for labor force, we would say. Thirdly, digital skills for ICT professionals. So at least we can distinguish these three levels. And of course, we can add another level or another approach if we look at those skills in education. In education from the very beginning until the university and after that, in the idea of lifelong learning, etc. So if we take into account these different types of target groups for digital skills, let me say something about the Spanish situation. According to the last European Digital Progress Report, which has been published very recently, and which provides data of the current year, 2017, in this report we have 5 chapters: connectivity, human capital, internet usage, integration of digital technology, and digital public services. Well, if we look at human capital, we see that Spain is a bit below the European average. It's number 16, and is below that average, both in basic and in advanced digital skills. So we have something to do in this respect. For example, if we compare the percentage of people that have basic skills and more in Spain is about 53%. For the European Union as a whole, it's 56. So, besides that, of course, we can be happy only if we reach the European average. We need to be close to the European leaders. And if we look at a specific measure also in this report, which is the number of ICT professionals, we see that in Spain we have very low number of ICT professionals. It's 2.4%, while at the European Union level is 3.5%. Okay? We have really to promote some the inclusion of new professionals in what we say that STEM disciplines. So taking into account this general landscape, let me go now to the skills needed for engineers. I think we could speak about a digital engineer. Digitalization or digitization is something that affects all branches of engineering. It's something very clear. All branches, no doubt. Very recently, I read the opening speech of his mandate of the president of the Institution of Civil Engineers, Tim Broyd, and he devoted his first speech to the idea of that digital engineer. The title of that speech was Engineering a Digital Future. And you should remember that the ICE is the house of civil engineers, which are people that are very tied to a specific sector, which is the building or the infrastructure sector. And going to that specific sector where me, personally, I'm civil engineer, so I'm Ingeniero de Caminos, and I devoted the first part of my professional life to the construction sector. And really, in this specific sector, there are a lot of needs in terms of digital engineers, really, because according to a recent report by McKinsey, this is not by Boston, but by McKinsey, and titled Imagining Construction Digital Future. Really, according to they say that the construction industry is among the least digitized. It is second. It is just after agriculture and farming, really. And this is not only in terms of overall digitization, but also in terms of assets, usage, and labor. And so there's this huge task of digital transformation in that specific sector. And we can see several trends, of course. IoT is very important in the sector of infrastructure, taking into account not only the building of the infrastructure, but also the operation of those infrastructures. And also it is important, of course, mobility and also the building information modeling, etc. So in many sectors, there's a need of digitization, a need of a new kind of professions. But I would like to point out about something that complements that view of the skills needed. And it is not only a question of technical skills that are needed, or that sometimes they're called hard skills. But of course, engineers need also soft skills or social skills, skills of persuasion, of emotional intelligence, teaching to others. And in fact, the human resources departments take into account more and more these other skills, these soft skills, when they are trying to recruit somebody. So don't forget those social skills. And in fact, for engineers, I think there's a huge opportunity to take advantage of this phenomena of digitalization, of digital transformation that affects all sectors of the economy. In my opinion, it is not only to be ready to survive in the turmoil of digitization, but it is time to drive that transformation, that digital transformation. So, I will finish saying that new breed of engineers, something that we can call the digital engineer, it's something that we need, and that type of engineers should be ready to drive digital transformation in every sector. Of course, collaborating with other professionals, and to that end, we need not only technical digital skills, but specifically social or soft skills. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for coming. Unfortunately, the organization told me that I could do the speech, the presentation in Spanish, so I did. I prepared in Spanish, and I'm going to read in Spanish. Sorry if I will try to translate some small highlight, but my presentation is already in Spanish. I'm going to talk anyway. I'm going to talk about brief reflection about engineering and artificial intelligence. Breves reflexiones sobre la ingeniería y la inteligencia artificial de cara a los nuevos perfiles profesionales dentro de la sociedad digital. The highlight could be a fact. The world generates about 1 zettabyte data volume per year. Un hecho. Vivimos inmersos en la sociedad de la información. El año pasado se generaron 1 zettabyte de volumen de datos a una velocidad que se triplica cada 5 años. La conectividad se ha extendido desde las empresas, casas y personas a todas las cosas que nos rodean, el conocido como Internet de las cosas. One issue, a more machine. Esta traducción, this English translation is online. Un matiz, nuestras relaciones con esos terminales, equipos y cosas están pasando desde unas formas complejas, con manipulaciones muy técnicas y complejas, a otras mucho más naturales, ricas e intuitivas, similares a cuando nos comunicamos entre nosotros mediante el habla, los gestos, las ideas. Puesta en valor de los ingenieros. Engineering value. Designing and building machine on industrial revolution. Hace unos 300 años en que apareció la ciencia moderna con Isaac Newton y su descubrimiento de la ley de gravitación universal y del cálculo diferencial. Más recientemente, hace 200 años, la termodinámica y el electromagnetismo establecieron las bases de la revolución industrial, donde los ingenieros desarrollaron las tecnologías asociadas a la gestión de las energías eléctricas y térmicas mediante el trabajo mecánico de las máquinas, con el que comenzamos a reemplazar el trabajo animal. La revolución industrial supuso la mayor transformación social, económica y tecnológica desde el Neolítico. Esto es lo que dice la Wikipedia. Artificial Neural Network Born, Artificial Intelligence. Aparición de la neurociencia. A principios del siglo pasado, un científico español, Ramón y Cajal, recibía el premio Nobel por la identificación de las conexiones nerviosas de las neuronas. Hubo de esperarse hasta mediados del siglo pasado para proponer los conceptos de redes neuronales artificiales surgidas de la sinergia entre las ingenierías computacionales y la neurociencia. Sin embargo, no ha sido hasta hace unos pocos años, prácticamente en este siglo, debido a la conjunción en la disponibilidad de procesadores rápidos y baratos, de comunicaciones ubicuas y de banda ancha, de grandes cantidades de datos, librerías de código abierto como TensorFlow, que solo está desde hace 2 años, que la inteligencia artificial ha empezado a dar sus frutos más espectaculares, como el reconocimiento del habla, la visión artificial, algo fundamental para el desarrollo de los vehículos autónomos, el diagnóstico de imágenes médicas, que mejoran incluso a los propios expertos médicos, asistentes personales y de hogar, que ya los tenemos cada uno en nuestros móviles. Data flow, the new electricity of 21st century. Esto es mi visión. Los flujos de datos son la nueva electricidad del siglo XXI. Se puede pensar que los flujos de datos de la sociedad de la información del siglo XXI pueden suponer en la actualidad lo que en su momento fue la electricidad, donde los nuevos motores de la inteligencia artificial son los que producen la nueva energía del conocimiento necesaria para la toma de decisiones, resolución de problemas, mediante técnicas como el aprendizaje máquina, algoritmos genéticos, etc. A personal story when I was working in INTA. Recuerdo una anécdota cuando trabajaba en el INTA de los años 80 en motores cohete, de una conversación entre un piloto y un ingeniero aeronáutico en el que este último le señalaba al piloto que los ingenieros habían comenzado a reemplazar el trabajo de los pilotos con el diseño de los pilotos automáticos, autopilot. Hoy en día, la inteligencia artificial ha subido el listón y pretende también reproducir el trabajo de los ingenieros, creando lo que, siguiendo esta tecnología, podríamos llamar el ingeniero automático. What are the challenges of engineering versus artificial intelligence? ¿Dónde quedará el rol de los ingenieros ante estos nuevos retos versus perfiles profesionales, proyectos, etcétera? En estos días son los ingenieros los que están programando estas nuevas máquinas inteligentes, las cuales demandarán durante algunos años trabajo de diseño y modelización para crear robots inteligentes. Por ejemplo, con el desarrollo del Internet de las cosas, se supone que habrá que dotar de autonomía, léase inteligencia, a esas propias cosas con las que interactuamos. El otro matiz es que creo que igual que supimos adaptarnos al reemplazo del trabajo animal por las máquinas en el siglo XIX y más recientemente que el trabajo de los pilotos se ha adaptado al trabajo colaborativo de los pilotos automáticos, pienso que el ingeniero automático, esta figura provocativa que traigo aquí, requiere por el momento de una capa de nivel superior donde los ingenieros seguirán aportando valor de forma colaborativa o desarrollando esos robots inteligentes. Bueno, traigo aquí algunas preguntas, pero entiendo que sois vosotros lo que, si queréis, podéis hacerlas. Thank you very much. Y sorry for the time.
Well, as a last speaker this day, I don't want to repeat all the things they are just said this afternoon, but maybe I can add, let's say, 2 more thoughts. I'm not really sure whether they are new, but I hope that they are. Listening to the presentations today, I think it's very clear that digitization means a lot of big changes, and they are happening right now. I think you brought it very much to the point by saying the revolution is there. That's just the statement. And people can feel this in their daily life. If you want to buy something, there's no need to go to a shop anymore. You can do it without going to a shop. If you want to do a bank transfer or something like this, there's no need to go to the bank. You can do it online. And you can fill a complete list with this. And this is easy said, but this means a lot of changes in the society and a lot of changes for professional profiles. And people recognize this, they appreciate or not. And of course, people have a lot of concerns. And I can say for Germany, the most concern in this topic is, of course, what will happen with my job? What does it mean for my job? And we don't know what really happening, but a lot of things will change. This is clear. If cars drive autonomously in future, we will need no more drivers. If you don't go to shops when you buy some things, we don't need more sellers. If the operation in the hospital is done by a robot, what is the role of the doctor in the future? And there you can see a lot of changes will happen, and not only for the so-called low-skilled workers, also in the high-skilled field. And we are of the opinion that digitalization must not be a job killer. It can be a job motor, but this means that we have some things really to do now. And in our opinion, 3 things are really necessary to do. First thing, we really have to invest in education, not only for engineers, in education for the society. And in our opinion, it's important that we have education in media competences in school as well as in informatics. And these are different things, media competences and informatics. And we have to teach both in school, and we have to invest in this. In Germany, we put a lot of effort in this thing at the moment to work on the curricula, to work out concepts to do so. And in our opinion, this is the most important thing we have to do now. Second thing is we really have to invest in the infrastructure. And I wondered a little bit that I didn't hear so much about this this afternoon. Infrastructure is basically necessary if we talk about digitalization. And when we look to countries in the world, all the European countries don't play an important role in the top of the rankings. And we have to invest in infrastructure really a lot. In our opinion, it should be a European task and not a national task. And I think you all know that we have these problems at the moment. When you have a phone call and you drive with your car from one country to another country, your call will be interrupted. And you can announce this to your partner by saying, sorry, our phone call will be interrupted in a few seconds because I will cross a border and I call you back in a few minutes. When you go to another country, it's not necessarily in that way that you have access to all the data via the internet than you have in your home country. And so in our opinion, it should be very wise to consider this task as a European task and to work on the digital infrastructure on a European level. That's my second thing. And the third thing concerning the engineers, we are of the opinion that we really have to train engineers, of course, in all the technical things we discussed here, but additionally train the engineers in thinking in new business models. Solutions for the technical part are one thing of the revolution, but new business models are the other part. And we heard a lot in the second roundtable about energy efficiency, what is changing with business models in this field. And there will be a lot of changes in other fields. And we are very much convinced that we have to train our engineers in thinking in these categories if we want to make it to a success. So to summarize my contribution in this part, if we want to make digitization as a success, we have to first invest in education, second, invest in infrastructure, and third, train engineers not only in the technical fields, but also in thinking in new business models. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your for tackling these very interesting questions, the digitalization and also the engineers that will be involved in this, and the deploy of experience of your roles in the different aspects. Thank you very much to all of you. This is the time for the questions. Stefan, please.
Hi, thank you very much for this excellent. Thank you very much for those excellent presentations. I have a specific question. I think we can all agree that we need to train professionals in a different way, different capacities, more specific knowledge, data scientists, and so on. But we also hear from the market that they say that within 3 or 5 years we will need 1 million just in Spain, or 500,000 more data scientists in our companies in Spain. Is there two things? Is there a risk for that only the biggest and economical most strong companies will be able to pay those salaries and get those data scientists to develop the 4.0 industry? That's one question. And the second is, how do you think we should do to attract young people, 16, 17, 18 years old, to choose to be data scientists, and just not just the numbers of today, but those 500,000 within the following 5 years or 3 years? For this is a specific question to Javier Uceda. Okay.
Thank you for the question. Very interesting, and I share the analysis and the concerns regarding this matter. Number one, today, if we don't do something particularly oriented to solve the problems, the demand will be much higher than the offer. So that means that the salary will be high, and that's probably true, that only those able to pay for those people will recruit some kind of the data scientist or whatever you call it. And this is going to happen unless something will be due in the next future. And I don't see concerns in our authorities regarding this point. I don't see that. So in the university, personally, I have my own concern, and I try to do that, and I try to push in order to offer more and more opportunities to the students in that areas, or just creating graduate courses in those. But it's just my own, or just a group of people doing that, but there is no clear consent about this particular point. And I agree that there's something that somebody needed to be addressed by somebody.
Any other? Let me say, sorry, Gabriel, please, s'il vous plaît.
I would like to raise something that is on our smartphones. You probably know that you have Apple and you have Samsung mainly. And you have Google behind that created Android system. And this Android system has been given to the operator that wanted to get it and use it, but they had to sign a contract. So we have a lot of difficulty to find this contract, but someone succeed, okay? And what is in the contract is that you can use Android free, but you let us use the information that you're going to get on the phones. So you probably realize now that you have a GPS in your phone, you have your agenda in the phone, you have everything. So we have been tracked, and now you can see on your phone some advertising because you've gone on a site. You can see now you have to know that you have a meeting at 3 o'clock in the center of Madrid, and you need 10 minutes to go there. It's going to cost you €4. Okay. So we didn't talk about that. So we have to know that, and since we are thinking and talking together, people are on their way to do all the things and saying officially that it's just for your own purpose, okay? But that's probably for their purpose too. And I do think that we have to think about that. I don't know what to do with it, but I give it to you as I found it.
The answer is that we have clearly new business models that they're offering to you services and getting for you data, and that's it. So you need to know, but that is.
You have mentioned, Javier, you have mentioned before in your presentation, very interesting, about the big data all around our environment, and the engineering as professional, as a job motor for this scheme. And also has mentioned, Lars has talked about the question of engineering focusing their actuation, their activity and function to the new models of economic models. All this implies a change. This change, which could be, for both the question, which could be the implications in the design of the engineering careers, the professional career, or not only in the academic university but also in the companies. Perhaps it's an evolution to a generalist engineering at the beginning of the studies and in the universities. You know very well, Javier, the university. And then, depending of the trajectory, professional trajectory all around the professional career, to go to the university or to the companies with long life learning, changing in function of this focus to the profitability and new models of economic models on different sectors, the STEM trends and so on. Which is the responsibility for this design? Of course, the professional, but the universities, the professional bodies, or which will be in charge of this question?
You decide.
I will try to start. I don't think that we will change in the way that we need only generalists in the future and no more specialists. We indeed will need specialists in future as well as we need them today. But maybe it will be not enough to be a specialist in a specific field in future. Maybe additional skills are more important than they were in the past and they are today. So for engineers, it will be, in our opinion, very important to work together with other disciplines in the projects, with other disciplines, as well as to work together and really to work together with customers and to act with customer needs in a completely other way than it were in the past. And this demands in new skills, they have to be trained. So we should not make, in our opinion, it would be a mistake to go just to generalists. We need specialists, but these specialists needs additional skills in this field. This will be necessary, and for the career, it's very obvious. Lifelong learning will play a very much more important role than it did in the past.
Basically, I agree on that. So I think that we will need a high number of engineering profiles. We don't need just an engineer. That's it. No, in my opinion, this is wrong. So we need a lot of profiles, depending on many different perspectives. So not only in the specialty, but also in the level of I would say, some of them may be more science-based engineers, and some are maybe more near the product of the services, but in general, I would say that those elements that we discussed today must be part of a common background for every engineer, to some extent, I would say. It depends, and they would change, but to some extent, we have to include some of those elements into the engineering education in the university. And at the same time, of course, in the companies, there is an important role to be for educate engineers in companies along their career, but it's something depending very much on the company, on the field, and so on and so forth. In summary, part of that should be in the core curriculum for everybody, independently of the specialty and independently on the orientation of the engineering degree in the universities.
And could it be a challenge for the university to receive these postgraduate studies 40 years old, 50 years old, or perhaps 60 years old? Could be a challenge for this.
Somebody has to cover this role. If the university does, perfect. But if not, somebody will do it.
Javier, in this area of data, of course, data are very important, as it was mentioned before, in digital transformation of sectors. And really, it's a main driver of transformation, data and the technologies that we have to manage those data. And really, I think it is very interesting to have a collaboration between professionals that know that data, because those data belong to their domain of knowledge, or domain of business, and some people that come from outside that business, and they are specialists in general in data science. I think that kind of collaboration could be very, very useful.
Okay, we are on time to go to the cocktail. And last, I asked for the Carlos del Álamo, José Vieira, to go to to the table to do the closing together with Lars. Please stay here, please, Lars, and for the closing, please.
But they don't have any seat.
Thank you very much for the speakers. Lars, stay, please.
Okay.
One minute, close.
Okay. I thought that is just for photos, but not. I must. Okay. Okay. Well, a final word of congratulations to our Spanish FEANI national member for this organization, for this event. Very interesting discussions for the future of engineers and engineering. So I'm very happy to become the closer of this session, and congratulations and thank you very much for the presenters and for the discussion. Thank you.